So this is the third in a series of 3 statewide convenings. We started in California in April 2024, and then in June 2024, we went to Ohio, and now we're closing things out in New York.
The idea was to engage additional stakeholders, a wider range of stakeholders, to talk about what was happening in the individual state. The main intention was to broaden the kinds of voices that are heard from around these issues. I think what has changed is the context in which we work, certainly in the ways in which people are finding other constituents, other stakeholders, other partners who also want to bring about meaningful change, who also want to continue the investment in young people's success.
Today in New York, we actually had those draft principles that we shared in our breakout sessions, and really provided an opportunity for folks to dig through those to make sure that the civil rights principles that organizations and civil rights partners are developing really speak to the aspirations and the needs of the communities that we are serving.
Today, I had the great opportunity of being a keynote speaker here. The Urban League is doing some amazing work with reimagining assessments and accountability for young people in New York State, and really what that means and how to, provide different opportunities to assess the learning for children.
The panel was talking about accountability and funding in New York State, especially as we enter a new presidential administration, what the role of the New York State Department of Education is as we move forward. In this panel, I tried to provide what it looks like compared to other states and what New York State, like other states, will have to do in the absence of leadership in education at the federal government, specifically with regard to addressing inequities, stepping in as a watchdog when the federal government will not, when it comes to civil rights issues, when it comes to lack of funding, and to ensure that we're upholding all students' rights to education, regardless of status, regardless of where they come from, regardless of what zip code they live in.
One big takeaway I got is how creative we can really make our curriculums. It's very difficult for me to imagine a world in which school isn't just about preparing for a standardized test. I think by talking to all of these teachers, other students, and even professionals in higher ed has kind of allowed me to understand that we can take more creative approaches to how we standardize education. And test scores aren't the only metric that we have to use.
It's stunning. It's something that every Black child, every person of color should be able to be a part of. They said this is to highlight the voices too often ignored, and that they hit it right on the ball. I'm just happy to be a part of something like this.
I just appreciate the different perspectives because you had, me from the state, border regions, you had the legislature, city council, some policy makers, and advocates on the panel. So you had various perspectives all weighing in about how, as a system, we could do things differently to get different outcomes.
Conferences like this is important for our parents, our students, and our educators, as well as state officials to attend, because it provides an opportunity for us to have conversations on platforms that we wouldn't necessarily have access to be able to have the voice that people are not hearing, to be able to bring forth change in a positive way.
We really have to focus directly on equity and how we achieve change. As some of the panelists said, we can give money, or we got to have a different kind of school that really works for particularly children of color and particularly low-income kids throughout the state. It's not an urban problem. It's an every place problem.
Everyone is talking about what's coming next. What have you heard? What kinds of things should we be looking out for? Will mean that we have to do things very differently, very quickly, very nimbly over the next few months. So there will be a national convening later this year where we will talk through all that we've learned, but also talk about what we need to do to preserve public education and a democracy.
We are entering an administration in which the rights of kids are being threatened, specifically our immigrant kids, and families are very scared going into this administration. And it's really important that New York State takes leadership in implementing policies all the way down to the ground level, training everybody, school leaders, front desk staff, all teachers, to know the rights of kids, to how to create a safe and welcoming environment, and to put in strict, clear protocols to protect students from immigration enforcement overreach in school spaces that are supposed to be safe for everybody.
But it's not just about the next 4 years, it's about the next 40 years. We got to be thinking long term, right? And I think some of the things we fight for might not come to pass until the third generation, but by that third generation, they can take change on to levels that we can't even fathom right now if we just do our part and change the direction we're going in today.
At the end of the day, we know that there's still work that needs to be done. We know that this doesn't stop here. This conversation is going to be ongoing, and it takes all of us to really be a part of this conversation. We're just truly thankful for our affiliates as well as the organizations and everyone else that was able to join us, our caregivers, our parents, our students, to be involved in this conversation. We know that it takes all of us to really see a change and make a difference.